Welcome to another episode of Meet You at the Top podcast. Thank you guys for watching season 1. This is the first episode of season 2. We're all happy to be back. If you do love what we do, please do like, share, subscribe. It means the world to us. You know what time it is. It's Meet You at the Top podcast with your hosts, Meg Dwolski and
Elfie Balumbo. Our first guest on season 2 of Meet You at the Top is going to be the top criminal lawyer in the city. Not only that, but she's also a TED speaker. She's an activist, and she's someone that everyone can relate to and learn from. We have Jordana Goldlist. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us at your beautiful office.
yes,
Thanks for being here. Welcome.
Amazing.
Welcome.
In the middle of downtown Toronto, it is an awesome office. If you ever need any criminal defense services, please do reach out to Jordana Goldlist.
Yeah, 155 University Street, downtown Toronto. So let's get right into it.
Yep.
Jordana, I did a lot of research on you.
Okay.
You know, I was a little bit curious.
We'll see. I'll test your knowledge too, okay?
Okay, perfect. Oh, we're already starting out with some spice. Okay, so I know when you were 14, you ended up going to a group home.
Yeah.
What caused that, or what led to that?
I started misbehaving when I was like 12 years old, but like acting up in very self-destructive ways. So cutting, drug use, cigarettes, stealing, like just general behavior that was detrimental to my own health and well-being. And so really it was more of concern for me than shipping me away, but my mom didn't know how to help. And all the, healthcare providers that she spoke to kept pushing her towards sending me out. And so she got in touch with someone, I guess, at Youthdale, which is like a center for residential treatment centers. And so I started off in one of their crisis units for 30 days. And then, of course, because they make money off of having more people in their beds, they determined that they needed me for a long-term stay. So shortly thereafter, I went into one of their long-term treatment centers and was there for like 21 months, I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So with that experience, did you have any like mental health during that time?
Mental health issues?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And what was one of the ways that kind of like helped you get out of that situation?
It didn't. I think Youthdale made me far worse.
Wow.
Right? When I went into Youthdale, like, yes, I was certainly engaging in destructive behaviors, but I was otherwise straight A student, like a star member of my basketball team, volleyball team, like very, very active in sports, had good friends, like life otherwise. And on the surface, if you didn't know what I was doing, to myself sort of thing, everything looked good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And here I was pulled away from my family, and me and my mom were super close. Like there was no one in this world that was as supportive of me and as loving as my mom. So I was torn away from her, torn away from friends, teachers. I was going to like a good school in Richmond Hill, and I got, tossed down into this home in the annex with social workers who great intentions, but at the end of the day, like I know what it takes to get that degree, and it's really not enough to be able to help 12 people with children with psychiatric problems. So it was worse. Completely stifled my freedom, my social growth. And so I learned how to sort of play the system, stopped doing things that were outwardly destructive, started using drugs at school in order to cope with this living situation that I didn't know how to contend with. And so when I, quote unquote, graduated from Youthdale and was supposed to be this successful, well-adjusted, balanced member of society, they were actually sending me back to Richmond Hill as a complete drug addict.
Wow.
And so, I came back into the school system, again, straight A's, following the rules, like, surface doing okay, but self-medicating on a daily basis. And that increased exponentially over the next 2 years, which is how, like, by the time I was 16, I ended up on the streets.
Wow. What was your influence, and like where was the starting point of that? Because you say you have great grades, good group of friends. Was it the friends around you that was like,
No, quite the opposite. Like, if my friends would have been influential, I probably would have been going to church every Sunday and doing things the right way. No, I was misbehaving. I was the one that was dealing with like a lot of internal emotional issues, and I didn't know how to contend with. So no, I didn't fall into the quote unquote bad friend group until later in my teens, and that was more like my drug addiction taking me into circles where people were sort of worse off and further along in their addictions than I was, and then it became this cycle. But no, when I was like 11, 12, 13 and started acting up, I came from a broken home. Nobody talked about it. This was at a time in life where mommy and daddy were supposed to be together. Everyone around me came from these like loving nuclear families, or at least so I thought, because nobody ever talked about whatever destruction was happening in their home. And so it was just a series of like small traumas, but that built up and nobody ever dealt with. And so it was just like the compiling of all of these emotional situations that I didn't know how to contend with, and so I turned it inwards.
Right. It's like a snowball effect.
Exactly.
How would you say someone that comes from a similar upbringing from yours, how can they get or even dream about getting into law school? Because, it's expensive. It's a lot of hard work. So how did you start that journey?
So, I mean, there's a huge gap between where I was coming from and where I end up, right? And so teenage years on the streets, back to school in my early 20s. Law school was like a pipe dream to me. I didn't think it was ever going to materialize, quite frankly. But I'm of the mindset that if you don't try something or try to do something or ask for something, then you can't blame anyone but yourself when you don't get it.
Right.
So I applied to law school, not for a second thinking I was going to get in. I really had my sights set on doing my honors degree in philosophy at the University of Guelph. That's where I thought my life was heading. That's where my application went. I was a major in philosophy, A's and A pluses across the board. Like, school came very, very easy to me. Wow. But I didn't have any of the background that I thought I needed for law school, right? Like, mommy and daddy are not lawyers, judges, politicians. Nobody was, writing reference letters that were going to guarantee I was getting in. Marks were good, sure. LSAT was okay, not fantastic. But I also didn't have, like, that volunteer or work experience either that I thought was necessary. So I threw applications into law school just because I thought if I didn't try, I would always regret not trying. Right. And so for a few $100s, it was worth getting those rejection letters, so at least I could say I tried. Yeah. And lo and behold, Osgood sent me one that said, "You've been accepted."
It's the best school.
And then my family was like, "What the fuck is happening?"
We did something right, I guess.
So yeah, that's really how it happened. I don't know how or why, but I ran with it. I was like in the throes of active addiction when I got accepted, and so I actually called Osgood to see if I could defer for a year.
Wow.
So I knew that I wasn't ready, and they said, "No, you have to reapply." And I thought, no, people like me don't get in twice.
I'll just come down.
You go straight through it.
Yeah, so that was it. That was the catalyst to me getting clean.
Amazing. And I mean, it's a good way to push yourself as well when you have like that deep focus. And law school's not easy. I know I think you need like a 99% now to get into Osgood. So good for you.
Thank you.
And what about the transition from law school to actually practicing? Because in our experience, realtors, there's no correlation. Like you learn on the fly.
You do the courses and you start and you're like, this is nothing I learned. Like you get into it, it's like, damn.
Yeah, they miss a lot in school. What was it like for you?
Law is the same, except law students don't know they don't know anything. So it's interesting as an employer to see the disconnect because you come out of law school, you don't know shit about practicing. You know about the law, but practicing law and learning law, two different worlds. So you know what's in the textbooks, no matter how smart you are. But there's a huge, huge learning curve. That said, I had transitioned my life and fit into so many different sort of walks of life by the time I became a lawyer that was easy for me, right? Like fake it till you make it became the theme of my life for the last 10 years. That's her motto. Like you just have to figure it out and know how to ask. It's a balance between asking questions and then just doing it, right? You just have to learn through doing. And so there was a lot of that in the beginning. I spent a lot of time watching lawyers. So I would go to court to do one thing, and then I would look at the docket and see what else was happening in the courthouse. And I would just wander into other people's courtrooms and sit and see how other lawyers did it. What do you do? I'm gonna
Yeah.
do that. Or you see them get reamed out by a judge and you're like, oh, I'm not gonna do that.
Noted.
Note to self.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there is a steep learning curve, but you get in there and you figure it out.
No,
Amazing.
for sure, 100%. What's the hardest part about your journey of getting sober to like law school? Like, is it like just graduating, or like what's the toughest part of your journey of from starting to like finishing?
So, I mean, my sobriety came in stages, right?
Mm-hmm.
I kicked the worst of it when I was 19. So I went to rehab for 6 months and then came out 2 years clean and then started relapsing in undergrad, but like in a more controlled sort of functional addiction. Like I maintained very good marks in university, 2 part-time jobs because like I needed to support myself. So I sort of maintained as a functional addict until I stopped. And then again, getting clean the second time was similar. I quit using, like, cocaine was my drug of choice, so I quit that in order to go to law school, but I didn't want to give up partying stuff.
Yeah, it's expensive.
So,
Listen, it's a hard drug to quit as well.
Yeah, no, and I had already, been through it at 20, and so it was sort of easier. This was like a 4 or 5 month relapse that I had to stop from, as opposed to like years of street level use. So that was easier this summer before I started law school, but I started law school thinking everyone's like me on the weekend, like we're still gonna go to clubs and boat cruises and shit. Right?
Yeah.
We're still gonna have a life here. And so I start law school and I get on my books and I'm like, oh, I'm a law student.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I think the first or second weekend there was like a major boat cruise, so I was out partying and it was like 2 days in, and then I show up Monday morning and I'm ready to be a law student again, and I look around and everybody seems to like know what's happening.
Yeah.
I'm like, but I'm in class. Like, you got to teach me what I need to know. And I didn't realize, but you get assignments and you've got to read over the weekend in order to understand the lesson on Monday morning. Like, you have to come prepared to receive the lesson. And I was not prepared to receive anything. And then I'm looking around and all my classmates knew what was going on, and I was like, oh shit, I gotta stop everything. This can't be, I can't come into this halfway.
Yeah.
And that for me was like, okay, I got to go all in.
Yeah.
This is like a one-shot opportunity for me. These kids around me are like private school educated. Like, some of them know the judges by first name because their dad's a judge and these are their buddies. And
it's an unfair advantage.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, if I'm going to even have a chance at competing, I need to go all in. And so my first semester of law school, I quit everything. I quit drinking, I quit drugs, I quit smoking cigarettes. I literally quit everything and was just like, I'm gonna give this my all. And that's been it. I never walked back.
Yeah.
Have you ever watched the show Power?
No.
Okay, so you remind me of one of the lawyers. His name's Davis. Not to a T, but Davis had a lot of street smarts, and that's kind of how he wins his cases, because he understands the crimes that are being committed and like how the street world works. How would you say like that kind of puts you at an advantage with like all of your past background and upbringing?
I think the key advantage I bring is in my relationships with my clients. And it's something I recognized in law school. I think we're like in second or third year, teacher gives us like a situation in which we've got to explain what we would do, and everyone who answered the questions was answering it from the perspective of coming at it from a lawyer, and nobody talked about what the client's needs were,
Right.
what they may want, what the best outcome is for them in their situation. And I was charged twice as a teenager. I didn't have any money. I used like a legal aid duty counsel lawyer who never once gave me the option of going to trial.
Wow.
I didn't know I could go to trial. I didn't know what my options were. No one showed me my disclosure to review the case. They were just like, okay, so you're going to plead guilty, and then when you plead guilty, this was going to happen. I was like, all right, you're the lawyer. I guess that's what we do.
Yeah.
And so when I recognized these colleagues, future lawyers, who also weren't paying attention to the client's needs, like, it was like a light bulb went off. Like, this is about the client. It's not about my needs. I go home at the end of the day. And so I've always brought that awareness and that perspective into my practice. And it's important for me, A, that the client understands like everything about their case, B, their options, and C, for me, it's like being able to understand some of the backstory in a way that isn't condescending or dehumanizing, right?
Yeah.
It's not like,
Right.
why did you do this? It's like, hey, talk to me. What's your situation? And I'm not coming at it from a point of view of judging them. It's, I need to understand some of the background in order to make sure I get you the best result for you.
Right.
And I think a lot of lawyers miss that, not because they're ignorant, but because it's just not part of their experience, and it's definitely not part of the legal training.
Now, actually, just kind of piggybacking off of that, are you allowed to know what your clients, like, if they truly did the crime, so to speak, or do they just give you the information? Like, are you supposed to know if they actually did do what they're, accused to do?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the situation, right? If the gun's in your waistband, you know it's there. Like, I don't have to pretend like it's not your gun. Nobody else put it there.
Yeah.
When it comes to murder cases, I never, ever ask, so did you do it? Until the case is over.
Yeah.
Oh,
And then I want to know the real story.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I want to know the whole story.
Yeah.
Like, I've had clients in my office after we've beat the case, and I'm like, all right, now you tell me what happened, because I want to understand it.
Yeah.
Now, there are situations where, clients caught on CCTV camera killing someone. I need to understand the context.
Yeah.
Is this a self-defense? Is this a provocation? What happened? So each case turns on its facts. But if it's an ID case where, like, the issue is if it's my client who either committed or participated in the killing of another human, I'm not going to say, did you do it? Is this you? Right? I don't need to know that. And we're arguing the case from the perspective of, this isn't you.
Yeah.
So in order for me to do that ethically, I need to believe it's not the person.
Right. Now, does your view change after you find out the full story
My view of what?
of the client?
Oh no, I don't care. That's not my job.
Yeah,
Right? Like,
yeah,
I don't,
100%.
it's what people do is what people do. I don't take cases against children. I don't take cases against animals. I don't take cases against the elderly. I don't take cases
Okay.
that I can't stand beside my client. Not that I agree with what my clients do. I do a lot of homicide cases, so I don't want to be here like, I don't care when they kill people. It's not the case at all. But like I said, if you understand the circumstances that people find themselves in, you realize that there's very few people who are out there killing just because they get enjoyment out of it, right? They're either part of a life or they're part of a lifestyle that has interfered with their judgment and their ability to properly handle a situation, and it escalates and gets out of control. And once you realize that, like, oftentimes my clients feel terrible for what happened, no matter what the defense is. Like, they're not excited by the fact that they've killed someone. They realize, like, shit just went way too far.
Yeah.
How do we scale this back? How do we fix this? What can you do? And so the majority of cases that I deal with where someone's charged with murder, manslaughter for them is a happy outcome because they recognize they did something wrong. They just, it's a momentary lapse of judgment or a poor lifestyle choice. They don't want to pay for that for the rest of their life, which is understandable. But, you look at the other side, you've taken a life.
Right.
So it's this weird balance.
Yeah.
What would you say is like the best like success story in terms of like, one of your clients was like going down a wrong path and then they completely changed their lives? Have you had any of those?
Oh my God, so many. Yesterday, actually, there's a client and we spent 6 years fighting his case. It was a battle. And during that time, I got to know him very well. Heart of gold when he's sober and when he has his anger under control. When he's not sober and or out of control, he is probably one of the most violent men I've interacted with. He has such a short fuse, and when he goes off, it's someone's getting shot. Like, it's no joke. But he never wanted that. It's, he grew up with really extreme trauma and a horrible, horrible childhood that had him acting out. And so we spent a lot of time talking. He knew my backstory and just wanted to understand how I pulled out. And that's what he wanted for himself. Yesterday, he sent me a picture. He's 1 year sober, and he's got a daughter. And he sent me a picture of his daughter sleeping on his shoulder at 2 weeks old.
Aww.
And it is, honestly, like, I got goosebumps just looking at this photo.
Oh, that's
like,
so cute.
You're healthy. You're happy. You're taking care of your responsibilities. Like, phenomenal.
Yeah, his life
Beautiful.
changed.
Completely. And so it's not everyone for sure, but
Right.
when it happens and I see it, it's like really, really incredible.
Mm-hmm. Now, what is considered a loss in your opinion?
a loss is certainly when someone gets convicted when they shouldn't. When they're factually innocent, it's devastating. They're few and far between, but it happens.
Yeah.
Judges get it wrong. Juries get it wrong. Sometimes police are so focused on getting someone, they get the wrong person.
Right.
Oftentimes, they get the right person, but they get the story wrong, and so the conviction is for the wrong count. You know, there's a different narrative that plays out in the mind of the police than what's actually occurring. It often can be a travesty that ends up in a life sentence if there's that disconnect between what really occurred. So that's certainly a loss. I think that's really it. I mean, there's often times where you'll lose a case, but sometimes you can't help it and the client knows that, right? Like, I don't know what is with your generation needing to photograph fucking everything you do. But, like, you know.
You're telling on yourself.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And so I get these cases where my clients are taking photos of the guns they're now text messaging their friends trying to sell. Like, what do you want me to do with that? So, you know, we do what we can and we try to exclude the evidence and you try to find a loophole. But at the end of the day, like, I don't take that on as a loss when you can't figure out that you shouldn't be recording your own crimes.
You told on yourself, buddy.
On your phone that's registered in your name. Like, there's, you know, certain situations. So I don't take that in as a loss. We do what we can, and I'm honest with people about the risks that they're taking and going to trial. Sometimes that's our only option because if they're caught with, you know, big numbers on fentanyl and firearms, for example, you're looking at a double-digit sentence. So it's worth rolling the dice to see if, you know, the Crown will make a mistake, the police will make a mistake, and we can find a loophole.
Yeah. Human error, right?
Totally.
I also read that you mentioned that if you could change one thing, it would be the courts not using lyrics against, you know, rappers or, you know, some of your clients. Could you do represent some high-profile rappers and things of that nature? What do you think about that? Like, do you think that will ever change?
No, I think it's a travesty, and I think it's one of the greatest examples of how racist our system is. Because I don't know of any rock music that's being used against people. I know of one case in which, like, poetry has been used against people. But it was so specifically related to the crime that it couldn't have been about anything else.
Right.
You know, rap music, like, when you look at what sells, it's violence and drug dealing and guns.
Yeah.
And when you look at, you know, what's happening in mainstream rap media and who's getting awards and what they're talking about, time and time again, that's the substance of their raps. Right? Can you imagine knocking on the door of Jay-Z's new $200 million California estate? He just bought the most expensive home in California. Right? That man made a killing off of rapping about murder and guns and drugs and the life, because that's what he grew up in. And I don't say that obviously in a negative. I'm a huge fan, and it's incredible what he's done. But can you imagine the police knocking on his door and being like, yeah, we're going to arrest you now because you're rapping about being a drug dealer and you're living in the most expensive home in California? Like, no, nobody's doing that. But yet you're okay to do that to a kid in Jane and Finch. You're okay to knock on the door of a kid in Rexdale and arrest him for murder for some rap lyrics that you don't even know if he's rapping about that particular murder. He's just rapping about what life is like around him and what he sees and what he knows will sell. So, yes, I think it's an absolute travesty.
And not all rappers actually rap about their actual circumstances, you know?
Most
some
don't.
do, some do, but some don't.
A lot of them just, they reach, right? So, no, I'll have to agree with you on that. So, what about the statement, the client with the most money wins the case? How true is that, in your opinion?
It's true. Money talks.
No, it's true. It's true, and not in a way that, like, you go and you buy the prosecutor or anything of that nature, but the reality is, you know, if you're prepared to pay your lawyer as opposed to take a lawyer on legal aid, you're going to get better representation because that lawyer is paid better for the time that they're going to spend on your case. You know, that's a reality. It's why I stopped taking drug cases on legal aid. It just didn't make sense to me anymore. The amount of time that I needed to win the cases I was getting wasn't properly funded by legal aid. I'm like, I'm not going to do this work for free, and I'm not going to do subpar work. I refuse. So, you know, there are some fabulous lawyers at some of the legal aid houses in our city. But are they giving the same quality of legal representation? No, you can't. You can't properly do it on the budget that legal aid lawyers are given. So yes, the more money that someone is given, the better lawyer they're getting. And part of that is also because you're paying for experience, right?
Yeah.
The longer a lawyer has been working, the more they're going to charge.
Of course.
That's just, you know, the way that this works. I raise prices every year. So I know that
she's expensive.
no, like
No,
most
I'm joking,
lawyers do, right? The
Yeah.
reality is the costs increase and our experience improves the work that we're able to do, right?
Yeah.
What I know now is not even close to what I knew 5 years ago,
Right.
You grow as a lawyer, and
Right.
so you want to pay for that growth. It's like anything else in life,
Yeah.
right? Like you want to go buy a watch, you're going to get a nicer watch the more money you're prepared to spend. You want a new
Absolutely.
phone, you're going to get more gadgets, computer, like whatever it is. You look at cars, right? The more money you're prepared to spend, the better vehicle you're going to be driving. So I think it's the same with lawyers. Again, for the most part, there's some fabulous lawyers that work off legal aid. There's some fucking horrible lawyers that charge ridiculous amounts of money that I don't understand. I watch them in court. I'm like, how are you even getting paid? I don't know what I'm seeing here. So I don't want to say it's always the case. Everyone should do their research, and I talk about that a lot. Like, research the lawyer you want for the case you want.
Right.
If someone comes to me on a child porn case, I don't do them. I've never done them. I don't want to do them.
Yeah.
I don't care how much money you have. I'm not interested in that work. But if I was prepared to take that case, I would be fumbling through it. I don't know what I'm doing. So, find a lawyer who does the type of work that you're charged with in order to make sure you're getting the representation you need.
Right. Now, having said that, how political is the justice system, and do you think it gets in the way of justice?
Oh, yeah. So there's a lot that gets in the way of justice. Politics is one of those facets. The system isn't necessarily designed to give justice as we think about it. So it's almost like a two-part question. I think it's very political. Don't forget, judges are appointed, and it comes up, it's a matter of politics.
Yeah.
And then how judges rule on certain issues is based on their politics. I started calling it out during COVID. Some judges were very happy to hear it being brought front and center. Others were horrified that I would actually say it. But we saw it a lot. So during COVID, judges had the discretion to give extra credit to some inmates who had spent their time in jail during COVID because of the extreme harsh conditions people were facing. Like, it was disgusting. We had guys that were locked up in cells for 7 days at a time, no shower, no
oh my God.
Right, imagine being locked with two other men in a cell, no showers, no access to phone, no hand sanitizer, guys coming in coughing everywhere. Like, it was really bad.
Yeah.
And so left-leaning judges were very sympathetic to these situations, and they saw, the COVID lockdowns as necessary, right? Like, those on the left were like, no, we got to lock everyone down. And those on the right were like, we shouldn't even have lockdowns. This is ridiculous. It's the flu. I don't understand what we're doing here. And so during sentencing submissions on certain cases, I would say, I don't know Your Honor's politics, but if you care about COVID, you should be giving extra credit because my client suffered these harsh conditions.
Right.
And that's the reality. That no judge was required to take them into consideration. No judge was required to give extra credit or care about it. And so we ended up with this body of case law that was completely divided by political camps.
Wow.
And I think that's the case on a lot of different issues. It really depends what a judge decides, because so much at the trial level is within their discretion.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there was a case that you successfully won in Aurelia, where it was the charges were for possession of trafficking, fentanyl, cocaine, weapons, obstructing police, and your client was acquitted due to illegally being detained and unlawfully being searched. And one of the prosecutors, I don't know word for word, but I guess had said to you that they were proud to represent sex offenders over drug dealers. Do you remember that case? Why do you think that some lawyers would prefer to represent clients like that?
I think, again, it really depends on how you see these different social issues, right? I think that sex-based offenders are creating the addicts who are requiring drugs to self-medicate, which has really helped drive the drug trade in this city, right? Like, I think if you went around to some of these shelters and safe injection sites or whatever the hell we're doing these days to try to make drug use safer, and took a survey of who has been, violated in some form or fashion, men and women, you would find that the vast majority of street addicts have been victims of sex-based offenses.
Wow.
And so I think that's a driving force for people who are self-medicating through illegal drug use. So for me, personally, having that opinion, I also see that, drug dealing is a means out of poverty in situations where a lot of people don't think they have any other options. And I'm not saying they have no other options, but that's their perception of their particular circumstances. And so they're joining gangs and they're selling guns in order to feed themselves, to feed their families. And when you sit down and speak to them, they're not forcing addicts to come and use.
Right.
They're offering a product which has a great deal of demand in society. Victims of sex-based offenses don't have the choice. They don't get to choose if they're going to be violated. So, when you look at the so-called victims of drug dealers and the so-called victims of sex-based offenses, the question is who has a choice to be in that role? And it's really only the addicts. Yeah. So that's how I see it. That said, a lot of people see, sexual predators as having some mental health illness and they can't help it and they can't control themselves and they're just trying to help this person who is otherwise oftentimes sort of better situated on the social hierarchy, right? Like a lot of these guys have jobs. A lot of these guys have a lot of money. A lot of them are exactly positions of power. So these defense lawyers would rather represent someone, who works on Bay Street and has this great job and can pay them, a significant amount of money because they can't deal with a conviction affecting their job and their families. They're married. They've got kids. On the surface, they are the sort of superficially more law-abiding person. That's what they look like, aside from the fact, of course, that they've gone out with their buddies and, gang raped some girl on the weekend.
Right.
Wow.
So they have an easier time defending that category of person. That's not my thing.
Right.
At all.
Now, do you think drugs should be a criminal offense, given the environment of BC just legalizing cocaine use and they're trying to...
Have you seen what the streets of BC look like?
Awful. I went. Yeah.
No, I don't want to live like that. I don't want to live in California. It's disgusting. It's
no.
city.
Yeah. I visited not long ago, actually. It was I was like, it's not what they show in the movies.
No, it's disgusting.
Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah, and it's getting worse, right? Because now, you're seeing street-level crime happening in Beverly Hills. So eventually that table will turn, I would think, because once the rich are affected, then, people start listening.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So no, I don't think that that's the right way to go. I also don't think that we should just be locking up addicts and thinking that's going to help cure them. I think we have to do a much better job of rehabilitating people.
100%.
Yeah. Alberta, I think it's Alberta. One of the provinces out west, I think it's Alberta, is starting to look at ways to force people into addiction treatment as an alternative to jail.
Oh, that's a solution, I guess.
It's something.
Yeah.
Now you are tatted up. Switching gears a little bit.
Not sure it's a question, but okay, yes, I am.
What do your tattoos tell a story?
Oh yeah, my whole life story is tattooed up.
Really? Can you share one of them with us? Of one of your tattoos?
I don't even know where to start. I have both sleeves, full back, chest.
Full back? No way.
Full.
Wow.
Yeah, like collarbones to hamstrings.
No way.
My whole back is
wow.
One piece.
Wow.
That sounds
so beautiful. I don't know.
Maybe one of the most meaningful that you can share with us.
So one of my most meaningful is probably my chest piece. I have pearls tattooed on my neck. Mm-hmm. My mom loved pearls. My mom's signature piece of jewelry was strands of pearls, and she'd have 2 or 3 strands. They were super long, big. Anyways, that was her thing. Everyone knew my mom by her pearls.
Yeah.
When she died, I inherited all of her pearl collection. This was 2 years ago. So I tried wearing them. They were so heavy and they were so loud. It was you could hear me coming down the halls. I'd be in court and they're bouncing. I'm oh, I can't do this. But I really wanted to honor that, you know, that love from her. And so I called one of my tattoo artists. I'm like, you gotta tattoo pearls on my chest. He's
I
like,
love
what?
that.
I'm like, yeah, no, we got to do this. So I have a double strand of Chanel pearls,
I love
which was
that.
her favorite. She like
Aw.
loved everything Chanel, loved pearls, and so in her honor, and now I can't take them off, of course.
Of course, yeah. Oh my gosh, I
Beautiful.
love that. And they
Yeah.
don't clank in court. So.
They don't make any noise. I don't feel them. There's no weight to them. It's and it's something I'm always carrying with from her.
Yeah. No, you're also a avid gun advocate. I would say you own guns. You have your gun license, which I'm in the process of also getting my gun license.
Yes.
How do you feel about Canada putting all these restrictions on gun laws? Like, what do you think is the end goal here?
So the end goal is all politics. This is the Liberal government's attempts to make it look like he's trying to do something to rid our world of gun violence.
Yeah.
He's completely ignoring the fact that the vast majority of guns that are used in crimes are not purchased legally.
Of course.
And they're not
Right.
purchased by people who are going to the gun range or hunting. They're coming into Canada the same way that cocaine is coming into Canada, that heroin's coming into Canada, that fentanyl is coming into Canada. It's the same shipments. You know, my clients that are buying kilos of cocaine are buying their guns the same warehouse.
Yeah.
So it's all coming in this country the same way, none of which is lawful. Now, are there straw purchases? Sure. Few and far between, though. When we trace where guns are coming from when they end up in crimes, they're coming from the U.S. Like, this is not rocket science for the government, but they don't want, I guess, to spend the time, effort, and money to cut off that supply. And so it's easy to target the legal gun community because we're so known, right? Like, we're
Yeah.
all registered with the RCMP. You know exactly what guns we have. There's no secrets around it. And so it's easy to say this is what we're going to target, but it's not going to make a difference. Like, I think it's been almost a year since Justin Trudeau banned the sale, transfer, and importation of handguns. Okay, so for the last year, me as a law-abiding citizen, handgun owner, I cannot buy a handgun, I can't transfer a handgun, I can't move a handgun, I can't do anything other than bring it to the range and shoot it, which is fine. But have we seen any decrease in handgun crime in this city? No, it's through
Right.
the roof. We got 15-year-olds shooting up their schools right now.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's no shortage of guns on our street, despite the fact that it's been a year since this ban has been instituted. And we're going to see that with everything. Like, you know, he's focused on guns that look scary, these assault-style rifles.
Yeah.
And what ordinary citizens don't know is that it was never legal in Canada to have a fully automatic gun. And people don't understand that disconnect between what they're seeing happening in the States, where people are walking around with legally acquired fully automatic rifles, and they think, oh, yeah, those are horrible. They're just designed to kill people. It's not the only thing they're designed to do.
Yeah.
Right.
They're designed for sport. They're designed for hunting, and we don't have fully auto here in Canada, and never did. Like,
Right.
That's not Justin Trudeau's doing. That's the state of affairs and how it's been in Canada since time immemorial. So I don't know. I think it's all politics. I think it's not going to make a difference at all. It's not affecting crime rates. It's not going to affect crime rates. Legal gun owners aren't just going to give up their guns, so Canadian taxpayers are going to spend millions of dollars having the RCMP knock door to door to take our guns away. No one's doing it willingly because the
Right.
buyback doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's just a smoke show.
Yeah.
So if someone were to break into your house, knock on wood, and you were terrified for your life, there's no way, shape, or form that you could use your gun as defense.
So my handguns have to be stored unloaded with a trigger lock in a locked compartment, like in a locked safe. So if someone broke into my home and if my guns were legally properly stored, I couldn't even get to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right? To unlock the safe, to take off the trigger lock, to
Yeah.
open up
It's a lot of
the
steps.
locked component where I have my ammo to load it. Like, I've been raped and murdered 3 times over
Yeah.
by the time I'm ready to shoot.
Yeah.
You know, if your guns are stored the way they're supposed to. Like in Canada, we are not... the laws are not designed to be able to defend yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you agree that people, Canadians specifically, should be able to carry with them? Because,
Yes.
right? Like, in
Yes.
my
Yeah.
opinion, I'd rather have a gun and not need it
Yes.
versus not have one and be in danger. I think when people, it's like psychology. If I know that you're carrying potentially, and so am I, I'm less likely to interact with you in a violent way because I know that there's that risk. Whereas here, you know, you walk down the street, criminals, I don't like to say that word, but people who carry, maybe they know that the majority, obviously, people don't have guns on them. So it's just easier to commit that crime. Would you agree?
Absolutely. No one's going to commit a carjacking if they think they're going to have a gun shoved in their face.
Exactly.
It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And yet we've seen for the last, I think, 2 or 3 summers now, carjackings are through the roof. We're paying the police millions of dollars to go out and investigate and stop these massive, like, carjacking rings that are happening because it's so lucrative, right?
Yes.
They're taking the cars, they're shipping them overseas. So that said, yeah, if someone was going to commit a carjacking and thought they might get shot by the driver, I think they would think twice. Or it's going to happen once or twice and they'll learn the lesson.
Yeah. 100%. Now, have you ever been threatened by a client?
By a client?
Yeah.
No, by victims' families.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Yes. Everyone always says to me, oh, your clients, you must be so scared. No, I'm more scared of the families of the victims when I'm defending someone on a murder charge.
Wow.
Right.
Those are the people that threaten me.
Have you had any crazy experiences?
No, I mean, when the tension is up, I've had several cases where court officers are worried for me. They've walked me to my car. They've had to, like, separate family to keep them away from me.
Wow.
Yeah. The better results I do for a client, the more likely it is. Again, not always. It hasn't always been the case. I had a case a few weeks ago in Chatham that was the complete opposite experience, where it got a great result for the client. He was super remorseful. He felt terrible the whole way through. It wasn't at all a show for the family. But 2 members of the family came up afterwards. He was still in the box. He had some more time to serve. But they looked him in the eye and said, I forgive you. And it was like next level powerful.
Yeah, I read that on your social media, actually.
Yeah, it
gave me
was
goosebumps.
phenomenal. Me too. Being in that court, me and the court staff were looking at each other like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Like,
Power
we
of forgiveness.
did not know how to process that. And I was expecting the opposite because it was a very, very low sentence for the circumstances of the case. And so I was sort of bracing myself to have to deal with, like, animosity and hatred. And it wasn't like that at all. It was actually beautiful.
Amazing. And we actually do have questions from the audience. But before we go into that, I do just have one more question. And Elfie will start us off with the audience questions. I mean, you have such a crazy life. Like, you know, this job is not easy. Obviously, you deal with a lot of characters and a lot of outcomes. How do you manage a personal life, like relationships and, you know, being able to separate your work from that personal life, that private life?
So I think that a lot of, like, my history instilled in me this crazy ability to compartmentalize. Like, probably to the point of being almost unhealthy, that I can just sort of tuck things away and move on to the next, whether it's the next case, whether it's, like, the next situation. I just can, and I have to, you know, and I think that because of how dark and heavy this type of practice can be, I also know how important it is to laugh. And so, you know, I laugh a lot with my staff. Like, we really do. We always try to find humor. We try not to, like, get absorbed by the darkness. Like, I think you have to have that separation in order to maintain your mental health with a practice like this. Like, I carry anywhere from, you know, 12 to 15 homicide cases at any given time, like, just depending on the practice. And so, and a lot of the practice is based on violence. So it can be dark and heavy, but you have to be able to separate yourself from the cases. It's not me. I didn't do that. I'm not involved in it. Like, there's only so much I can do. And I think it's a question of also setting boundaries with the client, right? I'm not here to change someone's life, so I don't need to get in there and be their therapist. And, you know, I separate that greatly. Clients ask me how I feel about things. I tell them I'm not here to feel. I'm here to think, and I'm here to respond. But, you know, how I feel is irrelevant, and I hate to say it, but how you feel is irrelevant. It doesn't matter how you feel about the situation. I can't fix your feelings. I'm not built to. And if I was going to absorb the feelings of all of my clients, I would probably not be able to do this job. So you have to have those separations.
So being emotionally neutral, I would say, is that hard when you're trying to build personal relationships, like, in your personal life, like
with a partner?
Yeah, with a partner.
Yeah.
No, well.
Sorry, we're nosy.
Yeah, because we saw that you are no longer in a relationship, so we wanted to just know a
that
little
has
bit more
nothing to do with
about
my
that.
job. I think, I mean, it's hard for people to understand the degree in which I give my job. Like,
Yeah.
I work 7 days a week. You know, yesterday I was still taking calls, even though I was technically off for my birthday. Like, I
Yeah.
still, you know, I worry that a call's coming in and it's something urgent. You know,
Yeah.
someone's got an emergency that actually can't wait till tomorrow. You know, I'm not pushing corporate commercial deals that it can wait a day. Like, if I
Right.
miss a call and I can't give someone the right advice, they could be in jail.
Yeah.
So I do take that responsibility really serious, and oftentimes, like, partners get upset about that, like the degree to which I'm prepared to work. But in terms of, like, emotionally connecting, I'm not sure if the issue is my job or just how I'm built, right? Which makes me good at my job.
Right.
I think it's sort of circular.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not very trusting. It takes a lot to win my trust.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think anyone I date has to sort of work a little bit harder than they might
Right.
other people.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you know, I'm also very independent, and I
Yes.
always have been. Right, I'm an only child, latchkey kid. I've been on my own for a long time. I've had my own job since I was 13 years old. So, like, I don't need anyone. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of time people have a lot of difficulty with that, like dating someone that's that independent, dating someone who's financially independent. Like, I don't rely on anyone for anything. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I think finding someone to keep up with the pace at which I live life is probably the most difficult.
Yeah.
I think that's been the obstacle for most of my relationships.
Would you date a lawyer or consider, since having similar work, maybe personalities even?
I have never. I dated a paralegal many years ago, and there was nothing about the nature of our relationship that either helped or hurt the relationship itself. I don't think that I would necessarily turn someone away because they were a lawyer. I also wouldn't look for another lawyer to date.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah. Like, I would never date another realtor. Let me tell you that.
Really?
Yeah, they're
I
crazy
would.
out there. No, yeah, realtors are a different breed. I feel like a lot of realtors who try to hit on you are either married or they've got a lot of baggage. So I don't know.
I think
or
that's
they're
everybody.
pompous.
I
Yeah,
don't
you're
know.
right. You're
I
right.
think
You know
everybody's got a
what?
whole lot of baggage.
Yeah. But anyways, we'll jump into the audience questions. Elfie will start us off.
Yes. Okay. So these are some of them are just random scenario based. So we'll get into it. You're being offered $2 million to work on a criminal case that was done to someone that you know and love dearly. What do you do?
Depends what was done.
So you'd potentially take it, depending on what it is.
Yeah, depends what it is.
Okay.
But,
Okay.
like, when you say what was done, like, do you know what I mean? I don't do any sex assault cases, so
Right,
you
right.
could offer me $100 million. I'm not doing it. Like, I've turned away ridiculously lucrative cases because I don't want that work. You know, but what was done and why was it done? Like, did you just break into their house and they weren't hurt?
I'll take that.
It's just stuff, right? Stuff's
Yeah.
replaceable. If I'm gonna get $1 million from the client, I'll just use it to buy whatever they stole. And,
Right.
Like, take care of my family.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
100%.
When the police steal money or possessions that are seized, are the officers in question really disciplined for their actions?
So, when officers seize something, what's supposed to happen, it's sort of like a technical word. They're supposed to log it into evidence and they keep track of it. And they won't steal it once it's been logged into evidence because now they shouldn't, at least. And now there's a paper trail. Often what happens is the cops come in to execute a warrant and they're stealing money before it gets properly seized and before it gets logged into evidence. And so that's the biggest problem, is that unless there's like photographic evidence
Right.
of what was there before the officers came through, it's very, very hard to prove.
Right.
You know, I don't know that I've ever had a drug case where the cops didn't steal some money.
Wow.
So how do they get caught if they don't log it? Like, people take
So-
pictures?
Yes, well, not
Or
people.
cameras.
So the police are supposed to come in and take video and pictures before
Yeah.
their search and then after their search. And so sometimes they make the mistake of taking photographs and then the particular evidence that they photographed doesn't actually make it into the logbooks. So there was a massive project. I don't know if you guys remember, the cops raided up in New York region a huge casino,
Yes.
like a huge underground casino.
Yeah.
All of those charges ended up getting tossed because the cops took photos of each of the rooms And at one point, they photographed, I think there was like 2 or 3 luxury watches sitting on a table. So there was photographic evidence of the existence of these watches, and they never got logged.
Oh, yeah.
They never made it into evidence. And so
Bye,
just
AP.
looking through the photos,
Yeah.
the lawyers were able to prove that these cops stole the watches.
Yeah,
Wow.
100%.
So they
That's
brought
messed
applications
up.
for a stay, and it was granted. They also moved evidence around. Their officer note said that, like, I can't remember. I wasn't on the case. I don't know if
Yeah.
it was like a loaded clip or like a bulletproof vest, but they claimed that it was found in one of the rooms trying to connect it to one of the accused, but the photograph showed that it was like in a completely different room. It was like in a living room and not a bedroom. So again, you know, you have these photographs and then you have the police notes, and there's a huge disconnect between them, and it, you know, only one can be true, obviously.
Of course.
Wow.
So it's few and far between that they're dumb enough to actually capture their crimes. But it happens, you know. There was the famous case of like a stolen statue. There was like a Tony Montana statue that they stole out of a storage locker. They were on CCTV footage taking it.
Oh my god.
So like,
yeah,
it's hard to deny when you're wearing this huge Tony Montana statue on your shoulder, and it doesn't get logged into evidence. Like, okay, dude,
Yeah.
it's gone.
Yeah.
No,
I mean,
for sure.
I've heard that police officers don't get paid that much. So maybe that's the driving factor of the.
I guess it depends what you call that much. You know,
Yeah,
a lot of them are
true.
on the Sunshine List, so a lot of them are making
True.
over $100,000,
Oh,
and
okay.
then you know you factor in all of their bonuses and like extra hours and overtime hours. They're
True.
getting double and triple. So I don't know. I think the point is that you're fucking police. You're not
Yeah.
supposed to steal shit.
Right.
Like you
Right.
arrest people for stealing,
You're
and you're
the criminal.
stealing.
Yeah.
You know, you
Yeah.
can't get more hypocritical than that.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what produces so much distrust and hatred towards the police.
Right.
It's not the good police that come through and are respectful and do things properly and they're just doing their job.
Yeah.
You know, I think that as an entity, the police deserve a lot of respect, but it's those cops that don't follow the rules, those cops that, you know, act out on their racial bias, those cops
Right.
that, like, are prepared to walk into a community and rough people up just to see what they can find.
Right.
Like, those are the cops that breed the hatred that some segments of the population have for them, and that's
Yeah.
what breeds the distrust.
Yeah. They
Yeah.
need,
Like, you want me to follow the law, but you don't follow the law? Like,
Right.
what?
yeah, they need to tighten up the testing process, I think, for police officers.
Well, Doug Ford's lowering it. Now you don't even
Yeah.
need college. You got these 18-year-old kids fresh out of high school. I can't wait to cross-examine them.
This is going to be easy.
Now, is it legal to record a police officer?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And does saying I need to speak with my lawyer make you guilty in a police officer's eyes?
Who cares?
Right.
Cops not judging you. You should speak to. I tell everybody, if you're being detained, if the police will not let you walk away, right? If you say to a cop, "I'm not standing with you anymore," he's like, "No, you have to stay here. You're now being detained, and as soon as you're being detained, you have the right to speak to a lawyer. That's it. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. A criminal investigation, if you're detained, of course, and if you're arrested, you automatically have the right to speak to a lawyer.
Yeah.
And you should, and stop talking about anything else. As long as they have your name and your date of birth, then they have what they need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You call Jordana Goldlist.
What are the top 3 things people should know when they are being pulled over that may prevent them from getting into further troubles?
What you should do before you get pulled over is to not drive with weed in the car.
Right.
I feel like I say this so many times, and yet at least once a week I get a call from someone who tells me their car was searched subject to the Cannabis Act, which is completely allowed. If the police have a reasonable suspicion that there is marijuana in the car, if they smell it, they see it, they ask people, "Hey, is there weed in the car?" "Oh yeah, I just have a joint in my glove box." Why the fuck are you saying that? I don't understand.
Keep it
As
in your
soon
trunk.
as you say that,
Yeah.
it's like alcohol. We're not allowed to drive with alcohol in the
Yeah.
car.
Yeah.
So it's
But
being
can't
treated
they just
differently.
say that they smelled it even though they didn't smell it? You know what I
Yes,
mean?
but then
Skunk.
if it leads to something else and there's nothing in the car, like, it's a little suspect, right?
Yeah.
Half the time when, I'd say more than half the time, oftentimes when they say they smelled it, they search the car and there's a big bag of weed in the car. So
Right.
yeah, of course you smelled it because you've got 6 ounces sitting in a bag in the back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there a way to get around being breathalyzed in that type of situation?
Well, breathalyzed isn't going to make a difference. Like, if you're pulled over in a ride stop, you've got to respond.
Yeah.
You have a legal duty to. answer whatever the police want you to do. Like if they want you to, they're doing a sobriety check, you have to agree. If you refuse to provide a sample of your breath, that's a criminal charge, and the punishment is the same as if you blew over.
So what if you just get pulled over, like say randomly,
Okay,
and they ask you to do a breathalyzer? Is there any way out of it?
No, but they again have to have a reasonable suspicion that you've been drinking.
Okay.
So they can't just pull you over and do a breathalyzer just because they feel like it. They have to be able to say why. So they have to be able to establish that, you know, you smell like alcohol, you're slurring your speech, you know, your eyes are bloodshot. I've had clients who are asked for the driver's license, they give their health card, they give their bank card, they give their, you know,
everything but
Costco card. And cops
Not
like,
the Costco
no,
card.
I swear to God. No, I need your driver's license. Yeah. And like, you know, they're slurring.
Yeah.
Okay, you're going to get a breathalyzer now.
Yeah.
You're probably going to blow over. Like, it's, you know, police have a job to do too, right?
Yeah.
They don't want drunk drivers on the road for good reason, right? Like, we've seen the aftermath.
Right.
So it, you know, it's about being smart. It's about, if you're driving drunk, don't have your gun in the car too.
Yeah, drive
right?
slow. No, I'm joking. I'm learning a lot though.
That is not my advice. For the record. I am not allowed to give that advice. Let's make it clear for the Law
my
Society that was not the advice of Jordana Goldlist.
So, Jordana, in your professional opinion, do you think O.J. Simpson committed his crime?
I don't know.
Come on.
Who cares?
I love that.
Okay. We'll do maybe two
that's
more.
A good question.
Okay,
yeah.
so is it easier to get a white client acquitted off of drug charges versus a black client, given the two clients have similar stories?
No, I don't think the law is applied differently to a black client versus a white client in the same set of circumstances, right? So all else being equal, but I think that the black client is more likely to be investigated by the police than the white client. I think the black client is more likely to be subjected to a more violent arrest than the white client. So I do think that there's certainly disparities, depending on the upbringing. You know, if we're talking about like a white kid from Forest Hill, is his sentence going to be lower than a black kid from Regent Park? Yes, but not because he's white versus black, because the white kid from Forest Hill is probably going to have mommy and daddy's full support.
Right.
Maybe he's private school educated. He's had a tutor all of his life, so he's a straight A student. He's, you know, volunteered at the right opportunities that have been provided to him because of the environment he's been raised in, whereas the black kid from Regent Park, you know, whose dad may be either missing or in jail, mom is working 2 jobs just to try to keep food on the table and the lights on. He doesn't have that same resume to provide to the judge to say, I should be given leniency. He comes and he's like, no, I was just selling dope so that I could help, you know, my mom pay the bills.
Right.
The law doesn't care about that. They'd rather be lenient, you know, with little Johnny, who's been volunteering at the food bank on his free time because mom doesn't work and dad's a banker, and that's the environment he's been raised in. And so we really see the racial disparity at different points. Also with bail, right? Like bail compliance is huge. I don't have phone calls from my white affluent clients saying that the police are doing, you know, bail compliance checks every week, whereas they are within the black community. So, you know, when you have all of these like continuous bail compliance checks, at one point you're going to find a breach, and that individual is now going to be back in jail, and everyone knows that when you're back in jail, you're more likely to plead guilty in order to get out or to get to the pen, whatever the case is. So that's where you really see the racial disparities. I don't think it's necessarily a case of like judges being so, and again, they exist, but for the most part, I don't think the judges are so overtly racist that it's like black client, white client in the same circumstance. Black client's more likely to get convicted where the white client's more likely to get acquitted. I don't think it's that blatant.
Okay. One last question for you.
Two more. I have one too.
What is the most unconventional thing you've done that allowed you to win a case?
Unconventional?
Yeah.
I don't know. I say a lot of shit. I don't know.
No.
I do. I push envelopes.
Yeah. Like thinking outside the box.
Yeah. Like in a way that's obviously still ethical and legally permissible. I'm not, inventing things that don't exist.
Right.
But I think this is a job where you have to be creative, and especially with the type of work I do. You have to be able to push the law in certain ways. You have to be able to invent arguments based on analogies in any given situation. And I think that, you have to be prepared to lose. We talked about loss earlier.
Yeah.
If you have the type of ego that can't bear a loss, then you can't push the envelope and you can't do anything that's unconventional because you're not prepared to take that risk. So I think I take a lot of risks telling the client, this is the risk. This is what we're up against. This is how much work, and this is what we're going to have to do if we even have a shot at winning.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate enough that I have great clients who say, yeah, let's go for it. I don't care. It's only
Yeah.
an extra couple of years. At the end of the day, an extra 3 years in the pen is really only 1 year because you get out in a third. So, we do the math, and it's like, okay, is this argument worth your money, and is this argument worth the potential risk after trial? And that's their risk analysis to make, but what doesn't factor in is like, oh shit, I could lose, and then there's this decision out there that I'm losing. I don't care about that.
Yeah.
Let's do what we can.
That's amazing. Okay, so last question, Jordana. Do you think equipping police officers with the body cams, do you think it makes a difference?
Yes. Sometimes it works to the client's benefit. Other times it's to their detriment. So I don't want to say that it's like always in their interest in terms of the case, but I think that it helps keep police more accountable. And I think it shows us what they actually do. And sometimes it closes off a defense. Sometimes I'll be like, no, there's no way that happened. And then we get the body worn cameras and it's like, oh shit, it's exactly as it was in the police officer's notes. And they probably mirror what happened, and they're more truthful because they know it's being recorded and we're going to get a copy of it.
Yeah.
But then there's been plenty of cases where the police record their own misconduct.
Yeah.
We've won cases where the cop claims to have given rights to counsel, and we get the body worn cameras, and he doesn't give rights to counsel. He doesn't let the accused person speak to a lawyer, and he questions them about the very crime, which is exactly what he's not supposed to do.
Right.
And he's recorded himself doing it in his own body worn camera.
Is there a way to erase that footage for the officers?
I don't think so.
No.
I think the whole point of them is that they can't erase them, and they can't, hide their own misdeeds.
But they
Amazing.
can turn it off and on?
They can.
Ah,
They can turn
okay.
off the audio. I don't think they can turn off the video.
Okay. It's interesting.
So I've had cases where, like, in order to protect their investigation, they turn off the audio in order to, like, talk about, I guess, an informant, or they have to call the police station and get other information. So we've gotten body worn cameras that, in a 20-minute interaction, they go back to the police cruiser, there's an investigation to do, and they say out loud, I'm turning off the audio for investigation, so that we know it's not a glitch. They turn off the audio, they talk amongst themselves, they, I guess, figure out how they're going to do whatever they need to do, and then they'll turn the audio back on when they go to re-engage with the client. So I think it goes both ways. I think in ways that, it protects the police from certain accusations.
Yeah.
It can protect the client because it keeps the police more accountable. It sort of works all around.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Jordana, for answering our audience's questions. I know that they found it very informative because we definitely have. And we appreciate, you letting us come in here. Again, if you do need criminal defense lawyer services, reach out to Jordana Goldlist. The address again, Elfie, is
155 University.
Yes.
Yes, but appointments only. Don't
Appointments only.
Don't pull up, okay?
We cannot, no. We can't have people just coming
surprise.
through. We're in court a lot.
Yeah.
So if people do need help and want to reach out to me, please, website is jhgcriminallaw.com. You can find all my contact information there, or just Instagram, Jordana Goldlist, and we can set up an appointment.
Perfect. That was my next question. Just to close this off, where can the people find you? So on Instagram, TikTok as well?
I don't respond on TikTok.
Yeah, just
I
watch.
don't have time. Yeah. So, but if you send DMs on Instagram, I get them, and then all of my phone numbers are on my website.
Yeah, and guys, follow Jordana on Instagram. She does give a lot of helpful tips that I'm sure you're all curious about. online. So Alfie will just close us off then.
Yes, thank you guys for watching. If you liked it, if you guys can just share the video, subscribe, and it is Meet You at the Top podcast. We'll see you there.
Meet you at the top, yeah. Back to an Alfie on lock, yeah. And they ain't never gonna stop, yeah. Said they